our resume website together. So we're going to be building this website, and we're going to break it up into sections for the videos. So in this video, we'll be building this top section here and this About Me section. And then in the following video, we'll be building the experience section. And then in the last video for HTML, we'll be building the education section, the community service section, and this little footer here with our Get in Touch button. We'll be building the CSS for each section as we go, and then after we build all of the HTML and CSS for the entire site, we'll be enhancing those features with JavaScript. Okay, in our last video, we learned how to open up our files, so hopefully you still have those files open in VS Code. We've got our resume website folder. We've got 3 folders inside of that, so our images, our JavaScript, and our styles, and then we have a file called index.html. And in this video, we're going to be working in this file. All right, let's get started. So HTML, what is it? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language that your internet browser reads, and it is used to build the structure of your website. So if a website was a house, HTML would be the structure of the house, the foundation, the walls, the roof, everything that makes up the structure of a house. CSS, on the other hand, would be everything that makes that house beautiful and unique. So the stone siding, the color of the floors, the color of the walls, maybe the curtains on your window, like things that would make your house beautiful. And then JavaScript would be everything that makes that house functional, so like the electricity and the pipes. And together, they make a house or a website. So let's just talk about what HTML looks like before we start jumping into the code. HTML is made up of elements that describe the content on our website. These elements have tags. So we have an opening paragraph tag here, and a closing paragraph tag here, and note that /. So that's the difference between the opening tag and the closing tag. Now, when we open a tag, usually we want to close it right away so that we don't forget later on. There are a few tags in HTML that are self-closing, but when we get to those, we will definitely talk about them. Okay, take a moment to locate the 2 angle bracket keys on your keyboard and the /. We're going to be working with these keys a lot when we're building out the structure of our website with HTML. On an English-speaking keyboard, those keys should be just beside the Shift key. However, if you are using a keyboard that is in another language, you might need to take a second to locate those keys. Okay, let's start coding together. So let's talk about our file and folder setup. So we have our main folder of our website, and all of the components of that website live inside of that main folder. So in this case, our main folder is called Resume Website, and we want that entire folder opened up in VS Code. And then we've got 2 other folders or 3 other folders inside of that main folder. So we have a styles folder where our styles are going to live. We have an images folder where our images are going to live. We've got a JavaScript folder where our JavaScript is going to live. And then we've got a file in our root folder called index.html, and that's where we're going to be writing all of our HTML. A note on how to name your files and folders. So try to stick with lowercase files and folder names. Don't use any special characters. Dashes are okay. Underscores are okay, but spaces are not okay. Okay, let's set up our document. So we are going to go to our index.html, and we are going to use the exclamation point and then hit tab. And I'm going to do that again one more time. So exclamation point, tab, and this is going to set up our HTML document for us. So what's happening here is we've got a doc type HTML, and this tells the browser, hey browser, I'm going to speak to you in HTML. And then we have an opening HTML tag on line 2, a closing HTML tag on line 12. All of the HTML that we write on our page goes in between that opening and closing HTML tag. This lang equals en, that is called an attribute. Attributes go in the opening tags of our elements, and they give the browser a little bit more information about that HTML element. So in this case, lang is telling the browser that, hey, this website is in English. So you could always change that lang attribute if your website was in a different language. Then we have the head of our website, and the head is for all of the information that we want to communicate to the browser, but we don't necessarily need the user to see. So things like links to fonts, links to style sheets, those types of things, or metadata. We also have the title of our document in the head of our document, and the title is the thing that shows up in the little tab in the browser. And we're going to change this title together. So we're going to get rid of document, and I am going to call this Jen's resume. Okay, you can change that to your name. And then we have the body. And the body is for all of the things on the website that we want the user to see. So just like our bodies, people can see it. It's everything that you want the user to see on the web page. It goes in between the opening and closing body tag. We're going to go ahead and save this document. So notice that there's a little white dot right now beside index.html. That means my file is not saved. If I want to save my file, I can use Command S on a Mac, Control S on a Windows machine, or I can use File, Save All, or File Save. And notice as soon as I saved, that little white dot went away. Okay, before we move any further, let's just open up our website in a browser so that when we make changes, we can see those changes. Right now, there will be nothing on our web page except for the name of our web page, the title of our web page, in the browser tab. If you have Google Chrome or Firefox, that's great. We're going to be using Google Chrome throughout this tutorial. If you are using something like Safari or Edge or Explorer, I would strongly recommend downloading Google Chrome so that you're able to follow along a little easier. Okay, let's find these files on our computer. So in my case, they are in my downloads folder. So I'm going to click on my files. I'm going to click on downloads. I am going to I'm going to click into my resume website folder. So maybe you've moved this folder over to your documents. If not, it should be in your downloads folder, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. So once you've located this folder, you want to find the index.html page or file, and you want to right click and you want to open with, and then you can choose the browser that you would like to open it with. And in this case, we're going to open it with Google Chrome. I'm just going to move this over. There we go. So now we have Jen's resume with nothing else on it. Okay, now every time I make a change on my index.html file and I save it, I'm going to go and refresh this browser to see the change reflected in the browser. It's one of the really nice things about front-end development. We get that instant gratification. As soon as we make a change and we refresh our browser, we can actually see that change. Okay, before we start typing our code, let me just go through some housekeeping items here. So when we write HTML, every time we write a new element, we want to use some proper indentation here. So notice that the header is inside of the body, and therefore it's indented one space. The H1 is inside of the header, and therefore it's indented one tab or one space. We're going to be using tab indentation in this tutorial, and that just makes our code a lot easier to read. So as you can see, the first code example up here and the second code example down here, this is the exact same code, but if I make a mistake, the one down here is much easier to read and it's easier to find my mistake. And it's inevitable, you will make a mistake at some point, so good indentation is really, really important. Okay, before we start building, we're going to talk about the structure of our website. So if we go back to this picture of our website, we have a header. This is the very top section of a website. Inside the header, we have what is called a div. And I think of a div as a little container inside of our section or our header. It has no semantic meaning, but it holds pieces of information together so that we could style them. In this case, we're going to hold our title together so that we can move it around the page pretty easily. Inside of that div, we're going to have an H1. Now, an H1 is a heading. We have the option to use H1 through H6. These headings should be used in order of importance. So H1, the most important title on the page. There should only ever be one H1. H2 is a subtitle, so we can have multiple subtitles. H3 is a subtitle of a subtitle, and so on and so forth, all the way to H6. Now, this helps mark up the content of our website and give some meaning to our content. That's really important for things like accessibility. So for someone who can't see a website, they might be using a screen reader. And in order to navigate the website, just like you and I would navigate, they would scroll through the titles and stop and start reading where they found something interesting. So we want to make sure that we're marking up our titles semantically and correctly so that we can help people with accessibility. In terms of the size of the title, we can always change that with CSS. So when you are trying to decide between like an H1, an H2, or an H3, decide based on order of importance. So how important is this title? And if it's the most important title, it's an H1. If it's a subtitle, so the title of a section, for example, it would be an H2. If it's a subtitle within a section, it would probably be an H3, and so on. Okay. So we've got a header and a div, and then we've got an H1. And notice that the hello inside of that H1 is a different color. So we're going to use a span for that. And a span is an inline element, meaning that it doesn't break any content after it to a new line. And it's usually used for this example exactly. So maybe we want to change the color of a specific word. We're going to wrap a span around the word hello, and then we can change hello in CSS to be a different color by targeting the span. And then we have the next section. So we have the About Me section. So inside of the About Me section, the whole section is a section. Inside of that section, we've got two containers, so two divs, one that's going to sit on the left side of our page and one that's going to sit on the right side of our page. Within those containers, on the left side, we have an image. On the right side, we have an H2, so a pretty important title. It's the title of a section. We have an HR, which is going to be this little line that goes underneath the title. And we've got a paragraph. And that makes up our two sections that we're going to build together. Okay, So let's go ahead and do that. Let's build out the structure of those first two sections. So inside of the body, I'm going to type the word header, and then I'm going to hit tab. And it's going to open and close a header tag for me. I'm going to do that one more time. Inside of the body, so on line 10, I'm going to type the word header, and I'm going to hit tab. And then I'm going to hit enter and give myself some space inside of that header. Inside of the header, we have a div, so I'm going to go ahead and hit tab. And then inside of the div, we have an H1. Inside of the H1, we have a span, so span tab. And then we're going to say hello. And then I'm going to put the comma after the span because the comma is not a different color. And if we take a look at our website, so if we go back here, notice that hello, I'm Jennifer Smith, it's all on different lines. So we want to break each word to a new line, but within the same tag. So in order to do that, we're going to use a BR tag. Now, I've seen people try to use this tag to add space in between their elements before. That is not the purpose of this tag. If you want to style your website, we do that using CSS. The purpose of using this tag is only to break text to a new line. So we're gonna use the BR tag, and then we're gonna say I'm, and then we're gonna use the BR tag again, and then Jennifer, and then the BR tag again, and then Smith. And I would encourage you to use your own name here, build a resume for yourself, make this workshop or this tutorial really useful for you. So I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut to save this document. Again, if you're on a Mac, that's Command S. If you're on a Windows machine, that is Control S. So I have now saved this document. And then I'm going to go back to my browser and I'm going to refresh. And I should see, hello, I'm Jennifer Smith on the page. So you won't see any color changes yet. We will get to that as soon as we jump into CSS, so in the next video. Okay, that's it. We've built the first section. Now let's build the about section. So header, very top section of the website. About is just going to be a section, so we're gonna say section. I want to be able to differentiate this section between other sections on my website, so I need to give this section a special name. So how would I do that? Let's go back to that idea of attributes. It is a piece of information that we can put inside of an opening tag to give the browser a little bit more information about that tag. So in this case, I'm going to use an attribute called a class. And a class is used to name something so we can target it later to style it in CSS. Class names can be repeated multiple times throughout the page. So if I have a section with a class of about, I could also have a title with a class of about. So we can basically reuse styles by using the same class name. Our other option here would be an ID. And an ID, we can only use one time on a page. So if I had an ID of about, I could never use an ID of about on this website again. So IDs are very specific. They are used usually to target an element in JavaScript. They're also used for same page navigation. So in this case, I'm going to use a class. So the shortcut for this, we're going to type the word section. We're going to say dot, and then we're going to give the class a name. So dot about. And then we're going to hit tab, and it creates for us a section with the class of about. So this is the syntax or the grammar for an attribute. It's the attribute's name, the equal sign, which is called an assignment operator, and then the name or the value of that attribute inside of double quotations. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time. So section dot about tab gives me the section with the class name of about. And then we have a div, and I'm going to call the first div left because it's going to sit on the left-hand side of my page. I'm going to call my next div right because it's going to sit on the right-hand side of my page. Inside of the div that goes on the right-hand side is all of my text. So there was an H2 about, I think it's just about, not about me. Let me just, yeah, oh, it is about me. Perfect. About me. And then a paragraph. So P tab. And notice there's just some filler text in here. This is called Lorem Ipsum, and this is just like Latin text that is gibberish, that is made to look like actual text. And a lot of developers use this as a placeholder so that you can actually see what the website is going to look like without having to have all of the copy for the website ready. So I would encourage you to actually write a paragraph about yourself, introducing yourself so that this website is useful for you. But since this is just an example for me, I'm gonna go ahead and use that filler text. It's called Lorem Ipsum. And if we wanna generate some Lorem Ipsum, inside of VS Code, there's a shortcut that does it for us. We can type the word Lorem and then hit tab. Okay, now it's sliding off of our screen. So in order to keep everything on the same screen, I am going to click on View, Word Wrap, and I'm going to write Lorem tab a couple of times, Lorem tab, Lorem tab, and that will give me a paragraph. Okay. Under the H2, we also have a line, so we're gonna use the tag HR, and that is a self-closing tag. So what does that mean? It has an opening tag, but it doesn't have a closing tag. The opening tag and the closing tag are the same tag. So that's one of those exceptions that we said we'd talk about. So HR is one of those self-closing tags. Okay, I'm gonna save this. So Command S, Control S, or File Save. And I'm gonna go back to my browser and refresh. And there we go. We've got About Me, a line, and a paragraph of text. Our website is really ugly right now. That is okay. We will make it look good once we get to CSS. The last thing that we need to do for this section is add our image. So if you have a really nice headshot of yourself, I highly, highly recommend using that. If not, maybe just go stand in front of a white background, so like a wall or something like that, and take a shot with your iPhone, and then you'll be able to use that, or your Android, your cell phone, and then save that onto your computer and you'll be able to use that. Otherwise, you could just grab a stock image. You can take an image off Facebook. You can use any image you'd like here. So once you've found the image that you want to use, and feel free to pause this video if you need a moment. Once you've found the image you want to use, we're going to save that image inside of our images folder. So I am going to save an image inside of my images folder. So I'm going to open up my Finder. I am going to look for Jen Smith, because I have an image called Jen Smith saved. And I am going to move that image into my images folder. I'm just going to drop it right inside my images folder. So move, there we go. Notice that I've shortened the name here to Jen Smith. If your image has a really, really long name or a name with spaces in it, you'll want to right-click and rename. So Jen Smith, you can just type the name you want to use and then hit enter. Okay, you don't want long file names here. You don't want any spaces, otherwise your image path is going to break when we reference it inside of our HTML. Okay, so once you have your image saved inside of your images folder, just click that images folder open in VS Code to confirm that you've got it saved. And inside of our left div, we're going to use our image here. So we're going to use img tab, and that will open and close our image tag. The image is a self-closing tag as well, so there is no closing tag for an image. There's only an opening tag. and notice that it automatically populated that image tag with 2 attributes. The first attribute is src. So that is where you need to go to find the image you want to display. And in our case, we're going to say, go look in the images folder, / and then find the image called jensmith.jpg. Oops. So go look in the images folder and then find the file called jensmith.jpg. Okay, note that these folders and file names are case sensitive. So going back to our naming conventions, this is why you want to use lowercase for everything. It's just easier to remember when you're going back and referencing those names later on. Alternatively, if you did not save an image inside of your images folder, you could just go ahead and grab your image right off the internet. Now, if you are planning on using this website and actually deploying it and using it as your personal resume website, please make sure that you have permission to use the image that you're using off the internet. Don't just go and steal an image from somewhere. So there are some copyright issues there. But Unsplash, for example, is a really great website that has free images. And you could look for something called Headshot. So if we're just using this for practice, yeah, we could grab like this image, for example. If we right click, you can copy image address, and then you could put that inside of the source. Okay, so I'm gonna just comment this image out so that it doesn't show up on my web page. Oops, I need to write a proper comment here. Comment in HTML looks like this. So comments in your code are things that someone can see if they actually look at your source code, but they won't actually show up on the website. So most people, unless they're looking at your source code or they know how to look at your source code, they won't be able to see comments on your website. Okay, so we'll just keep that as a code reference. Okay, and then the alt attribute, so we're almost done here. The alt attribute is a description of image in words, and that goes back to accessibility. It is for screen readers. The best way to write some alt text is to pretend that you're describing the image to someone on the phone. So you don't need to say like, this is an image of. The screen reader is already going to know that it's an image, so you just need to describe the image inside of the alt text. The alt text is what is going to be read out to someone who can't necessarily see the image. So headshot of Jen Smith reflected in whiteboard is going to be a good description of my image in particular. So I'm going to save this. So Command S, Control S, or File Save. And then we're going to go back and just refresh our website here. So to refresh, and now we've got an image. It is massive right now, so we're definitely going to want to scale that down in the next video. But that's it. You've just built the first 2 sections of the resume website with HTML, so congrats on finishing that. You can stop the video here, and I'll see you in the next one.